what people are looking for more than anything else is to be heard. They really are, to be heard and to be understood. That is a major portion, I would say, of the work that I.
Welcome to Biz Stories Shared, where storytellers share their inspiration, motivation, some disappointments, and how they applied the lessons that led them to success. Stories are gifts. Listen as these gifts are shared. Now, here is your host, Charlotte Plott.
Hello, storytellers. Charlotte Plott here, and I'm thrilled to bring you our guest today, James Kawainui. James, are you ready to be a storyteller?
I am.
Oh, that's great. We're anxious to hear your story. So James is a native Hawaiian healer whose family lineage can be traced back over 20 generations in old Hawaii. He wanted to be a nurse in his early 20s, and even back then he had an unconscious desire to help people. Well, James, would you give us a little bit more detail about your life and how you delved into you being helping other people, and then some of your personal life if you'd like to also?
Sure, I would love to, Charlotte, and thank you for having me today. I'm the oldest of 8 children, actually, and I grew up on a coffee farm in Kona,
Ah,
on the Big Island. And when I was growing up, that's what we did. We worked on the coffee fields. But I knew I wanted to do something else, so I left. I actually left home 2 weeks after high school,
oh my.
and I joined the Navy. And back in 1976, when everybody was cheering on the bicentennial of the United States, I was in boot camp,
Oh dear.
which was it was okay. It actually helped me. After the Navy, I moved to Florida, and I did want to go to nursing school, but I had 2 children at the time, and I was making minimum wage, which back then was
Mm.
$3.30 an hour,
Oh, ouch.
and somebody offered me $9 an hour to become a carpenter. So I became a carpenter,
Uh-huh.
and it changed, and that took my life in a different course. And through my carpentry work, I ended up working for a really large company that was. I lived about 15 miles from Kennedy Space Center on the east coast of Florida, and I started working for a company. I actually started at the bottom
Uh-huh.
in their production facility, and over the course of the 17 years that I worked with them, I actually worked my way all the way up into a senior manager position in one of their divisions. They had 9 different plants scattered all over the United States. And so I became one of their senior executive managers. And I ran 2 departments. I was in charge of customer service and inspection and testing. And I was also, for those people that know what ISO auditing is, I was an ISO 9002 auditor. So I was very left brain
Mm-hmm.
in my former life. But about 20 years ago, even though I was working for this company, people started showing up in my office, and they would show up and they would walk in and they would close the door and they would say, James, I hurt here, or something's happening in my life. And for some unknown reason, they would just talk to me about what was happening in their lives. And in the beginning, I thought, well, I need to help them somehow and to talk. And I did. And then one day I realized something in the back of my mind said, just shut up. Don't say anything.
Hmm.
And it was amazing because people would come into my office, they would close the door, they would tell me their story, and it would be, and it came to me that I saw it like a circle, and it would go in a circle, and they would talk about everything they had, and then they would come into this place, and they would find their own answers.
Really?
And really, and then they would stand up and say, "Oh my God, you're so amazing! Thank you so much." And they would walk out of my office, and they would leave me literally scratching my head, going, "What just happened?"
Uh-huh.
And so I chose not to even question that. But and then other people would show up and they would say, I hurt here. And my hand would inevitably go to that place where they were hurt. And I would do something and their pain would go away. And they would look at me and they go, oh my God, James, that was amazing. And they walk on my office and I would scratch my head going, what was happening? And I didn't understand that. And I moved through the company and I ended up in this position that I was telling you about as a senior manager. And one night, after a really hard week, uh, I was camping in the backyard with my grandsons. They were 4 years old. Somebody came up literally and tapped me in the back of the head and said, "It's time to go home." It was a clear,
Wow.
it's the first time I ever had a clear, what they call clear audience, which is where you hear a voice speak to you. And voice said, "It's time to go home." And I looked at my wife and I said, "What are we doing here?" I was actually in Ohio at the time. And she said, "I don't know." And I said, I called my sister. I said, "Who's living at the beach house?" She said, "No one." I said, "I'm coming home."
Oh
I
my.
went I went into my boss's office the very next day in a pair of shorts with the t-shirt and flip-flops on. Okay. So I was a senior manager and I walked into my boss, the president of the company, and I closed the door and I said, "Dave, I quit."
My goodness.
I quit right then and there. It was the voice was so profound that I had to do something with that, and I quit. I sold everything that I had. I sold my house in Florida. I sold everything I had. I moved back to Hawaii. I lived in a shack on the beach, a 20 by 20 shack that had no electricity, had no running water. It actually had an outhouse for a toilet
Wow.
for 3 years. And every morning I would take my cup of Kona coffee. I would walk across the street. There was a coke. This is like this crazy dream or like a movie. I would sit under my coconut tree in a chair that I carved out of this stump of a tree, and I would just stare at the ocean.
Huh.
And in those 3 years, when I did that, what happened was I just left that whole life.
Right.
And this actually has something to do with my aha moment later on when we
Okay.
talk about that. And I left all of that. And slowly, there's this other part of me that came in, and people started showing up again. And they go, "You're supposed to be doing this." And they would tell me about all these fantastic healing things I was supposed to be doing. And I would look at them and go, "You guys are nuts. All I want to do is sit under my tree, go surfing when there's waves, and do nothing." And slowly through that process, that was 15 years ago, the more I started to listen and the more that I started to surrender to spirit, I would say. The Hawaiians would say to your kupuna, which is your ancestors, the more I surrendered, the more I started to listen to them. And I realized that they had been talking to me for a really long time.
Hmm.
And that has been, then it took me on these fantastic journeys. I lived in New Zealand, and then I got told I needed to move to the States. And it's a whole story. We could go on forever. But the point is that the listening and the surrender is what ultimately is bringing me to the place that I am today.
Well, that's a very interesting story, James. And what I hear is that you are a good listener. You listened to the people that came in your office, and then when you were sitting in your chair under the tree, you were still listening. So that you really are a good listener, and that's a pretty powerful attribute to have.
It is, and it actually helps me in my work now with the people that I do now, the one-on-one private work that I do with people and the healing work that I do. What people are looking for more than anything else is to be heard. They really are to be heard and to be understood. That is a major portion, I would say, of the work that I do. One of the things that I was gifted with is an ability to create what I guess in the energetic world or in the healing world they would call sacred space. But for me, it just means some place where people feel so safe
Hmm.
that they can talk about their innermost feelings and their innermost thoughts and the places that are painful. And by doing that, we find really where that's coming from. And that's really the root of my work is to help people in that way.
Well, that really is wonderful because we do need to be heard, and so that's a very important blessing that you have to be able to listen to people and to help them in that way. Well, thank you for sharing that part of your life.
You're
That was
welcome.
really fascinating.
You're welcome.
Well, here we're going to go to the next step now, and at Biz Stories Shared, we start every show with our guest's favorite quote. So, James, what's your favorite quote, and how do you apply this to your everyday thinking?
My favorite quote comes actually from a book that's called the Book of Runes, which is a book that explains about the Celtic and Nordic runes. They have a set of stones that they use for divination,
Hmm.
and at the back of the book, I read this, and I read it for about 4 or 5 years, and then one day I read it, and I actually burst into tears because I finally understood what it meant. And it says, I no longer try to change outer things. They are simply a reflection. I change my inner perception, and the outer reveals the beauty so long obscured by my own attitude. I concentrate on my inner vision and find my outer view transformed. I find myself attuned to the grandeur of life and in unison with the perfect order of the universe.
Well, that is beautiful. That I can see why you had to read that a number of times because there's a lot of depth to that.
There's a lot of depth to that.
Well, how would you want the storyteller listeners to apply that quote to their journey?
When I read this and when it finally came in, what one of the things that I came to was that the realization that I'm not participating in life. Life is participating with me.
Okay.
And so when I say that, um, there's a place inside of us where we hopefully all get to realize that we are the creators and that everything that we see in our outside perception, in other words, everything that I see in my world around me, is really a creation of how I'm feeling or thinking inside of me.
Okay.
And so if I'm a person that says, I always get bad breaks or I have bad luck or this is always happening to me, or if a person that says and somebody says, wow, that person looks so lucky and everything happens to them, what the realization is that I have control over my destiny. And that's really what that means. And so when I can let go, and inside of this means letting go of my ego and
Mm.
thinking that I have to do everything, and
Mm-hmm.
I allow the universe, i.e., creator, i.e., God, whatever you want to say, and however you look at that, let them be in charge. And my life changes. And it has because of that.
Wow. And you say you had this book for a number of years and read
It,
it
it,
often?
you actually can't see it, and everybody else out there can't see it, but my book is so tattered that it's
That's
it's
really tattered.
it's actually, if you look at it, Charlotte, you can see it's taped on the ends and it's taped on the inside. And I keep it in this special bag now because it gets so beat up and the corners are all dented. It's because this book goes everywhere I go.
Wow.
This book
That's
goes
a
everywhere I go.
that's a very interesting story and thank you for sharing that.
You're
That
welcome.
was beautiful.
You're welcome.
Well, now I want to ask you to tell us a story about your worst entrepreneurial experience. As a healer, do you consider yourself an entrepreneur?
Well, that's an interesting question because for a long time, and because of the understanding and idea of a healer or as an indigenous healer or a shaman or a medicine man or whatever you want to call that, um, we look at that as something we do. But
Okay.
I've had a hard time, and this is probably one of my entrepreneurial failures, is I've had a really hard time looking at that as a profession, as my business, as my job.
Okay.
And so I really just kind of floated along for maybe the last, I don't know, I would say 8 or 10 years where I was doing my work and I didn't have any marketing skills. I didn't know anything about promotion. 90% of my clients were word of mouth and it worked really well.
Sure.
Except when I moved to Phoenix.
Not so good?
Well, the last 2 years have been a bit of a struggle because
Oh,
I came to Phoenix in a place and if I could talk to you about my aha moment inside of this as well. I
sure.
mean, the aha moment came out of the understanding of the failure of looking at myself as my business.
Okay.
And it only it's this that aha moments only came in recently. And I realized that when I quit my job and I walked away from the corporate environment, I mean, I knew how to do business.
Mm-hmm.
I knew how to make plans. I knew how to make budgets. I knew how to do all of those things. When I walked away, I realized that I wasn't in integrity with my life.
Okay. Right.
And my business corporate life was not in integrity with who I was. So when I actually walked away from that job, I actually walked away from everything and all the knowledge that I had gathered all those years. I actually have a degree in accounting. I walked away from all of it.
Wow.
And I didn't even pay attention to any of it. And my wife would look at me and she said, "My God, you worked in the corporate environment." She said, "You know about business." But yet I would never consider myself a businessman.
That's interesting.
And so the aha came when I went, "Oh my God, I can actually be in business and I can actually be in alignment inside of myself and integrity inside of myself. And those two things can actually go hand in hand." And so my failure was not being able to look at my business. And it got to a point that was so bad that I was so deep in, I went into this deep depression
Mm-hmm.
that um, I actually shut people out. And nobody came to see me for a few months. I mean, my business actually completely stopped.
Wow.
And I was at a loss because the more people didn't show up, the more depressed I came because they
Sure.
didn't show up. Yet I didn't realize inside of myself that I actually had put the wall up to keep people away. And when I came to that aha, when I said, oh, I can be a business now. I can be a healer. And because the truth is, being a healer, there's an exchange of energy, right? And that
Right.
means that I do something for someone and they give me something in return, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
In the olden days, as a shaman or as a medicine man or a healer in a village, that was a pig or a chicken or
Okay.
eggs, or
Right.
they fix my roof.
Right.
And so I had a very unclear understanding of money as the exchange because I was looking for the pig and the chicken.
Right.
Does that make sense?
That makes
I mean, I,
sense.
I mean, it sounds a little rudimentary, but that was a thought form that was inside of my head. I mean, you have to remember, I have 20 generations of being that healer in my lineage, and so that was the way in the olden days, quote unquote, we were paid, right?
Right.
So the shifting of that created the shift inside that says, right, I can be abundant, I can be prosperous. It is okay for me to accept money as a means of transfer for the work that I do.
Right. And that I can see that was a big aha moment for you to know that it was okay to accept money and you didn't have to have a pig or a chicken.
I didn't have to have a pig or a chicken. And then right on top of that, there was another actually aha moment that came in. And it has to do again with being the indigenous healer, right?
Okay.
In the village where a healer lives, where the shaman lives, where the medicine man lives, everybody in that village knows the shaman. Everybody knows the healer. They
Oh,
know where the healer lives. They know that if I have a trouble or if I'm having problems, whether it be physical, spiritual, or emotional, I can actually go to that person.
right.
They live usually on the edge of town, and everybody goes there, right? And they find them. I realized that I live in my village, and I realized my village is Phoenix, right? The city of
Right.
Phoenix
Right.
has what, more than 6 million people here?
Yeah, a lot.
A lot, right? Nobody in my village knew that I was here. So how could they come and see me, and how
Right.
could they come to me for the work that I do so that I can help them
Right.
unless they knew I was here?
That's so true. That is.
And that changed a lot. So
Good.
now I'm out, and it was the way I met you, was
Right.
through the meeting that I met you at, and the other places that I've been, to be able to say, okay, it's okay to promote yourself. It's
Right.
okay to market. It's okay to do this. So
Right.
those are my ahas and my failure and kind of my success at the same
Yeah, I'd
time.
say
So
that's a very good combination. You realize, and it. I'm sure that it was very challenging for you in the beginning to step out because even though you have all of this healing wisdom and everything, you still have a comfort zone, and so you stepped out and you were still able to be true to your integrity and so good for you. I'm glad that we met at Alliances and hopefully that this little podcast is going to be broadcast and people will get to know that you're here in this village.
thank you. I really appreciate that. And you're right. It's that place of understanding that and coming into, I guess, into alignment with
Right.
myself, and saying, this is okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is okay, James. You can
Yeah.
really do this.
Well, I'm glad you reached that point. That's
Thank you.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, now I'm going to ask you to bring us to the present time and share your proudest entrepreneurial moment.
That's a really good question. My proudest entrepreneurial moment. I would have to say that I'm actually starting to do professional speaking.
Oh, wow.
That's my proudest entrepreneurial moment. It's a step really out into the world, and so I I basically I said, okay, spirit, kupunas, my ancestors. I said, I'm ready. I'm ready to be out into the world. I'm ready to tell people what you've been telling me that I need to talk about for the last how many years that you've been telling me
Good.
that. And I said, I'm ready. And within a week, I had actually 4 speaking engagements.
Wow. Well, see, that just goes to prove what a really good listener you are. You listen to your kapuna also.
Also, and I'm also a little stubborn. It's taken a little bit longer than they might have wanted, but I'm where I am now, and I'm
Right.
very grateful and I'm very happy.
Good. Well, people want to hear stories like yours, how you're growing and your struggles and but you're making your business a success. And you didn't choose an easy one to be going into speaking. So I know that you're going to have a lot of success there and people are going to come to you because you are a good listener. And
Thank you.
that's such an important skill to have.
Thank you.
Well, James, what's the best business advice you ever received? Maybe you already told us it was from your kapuna, huh?
Actually, maybe it's not my best business advice, but an example of something that I just saw recently, I mean, very recently, that is really, I think, going to help me change a lot about how I do what I do in the world.
Okay.
And that would be the Kansas City Royals.
Well, tell me more about that.
Well, the Kansas City Royals just won the World Series. I'm not a baseball fan, and I never watch baseball, but I was compelled to watch the series and the playoffs this year. And I kind of kept half an ear open as they were going through, and I kept listening to them. You know, they would be down in the eighth inning. They were down in the ninth inning.
Yes.
Last night in game five, they were down 2-0 at the top of the ninth inning.
Right.
And they came back to score 2 runs, and they actually ended up winning the game and the World Series 7-2. And I kept watching the players,
Right.
and they absolutely have no fear
Right.
about what they were doing. They are so confident in what they are doing that they actually have no fear. And they gave me an unbelievable example of what it looks like to just do what you love.
Hmm.
And that's what they do. They do what they love.
That's so true. And it really touches my heart that you picked that particular story to tell because my grandson Keaton was drafted right out of high school to play for the Royals.
Wow.
He went into the draft with a shoulder injury
Right.
and he was in rehab for 2 years and they kept working with him and working with him. And then he started pitching and he's moving up. And when spring training would come to Surprise,
Mm-hmm.
our families would all get together and surprise, and my daughter would cook dinners for those like Mustakas and
Oh,
Duffy. those
right.
those players were all eating dinner with all of us, and so when you see them playing now and the success that they've had, it really is heartwarming and believing in them and their courage to step out. Keaton had to give up because he had another shoulder injury and didn't want to go through surgery and the rehab again. So
Right.
I'm sorry he didn't continue, but I'm so proud of that team. They really did wonderful.
They're amazing. They're amazing. And they have they had a manager, they have a coach that actually let them be themselves,
Right.
you know. And how many times in our lives where we came up against people or someone that wouldn't let us be who we were, even ourselves sometimes.
Absolutely.
Even
Yes.
ourselves sometimes, you know.
Sometimes we're our own worst enemy.
I can attest to that. You know, I can attest to that.
Right. Well, that was a delightful answer. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And so now, would you tell us what is the vision of the future of your business?
You know, it's multifaceted. It's interesting. My wife and I just sat down and we did a 2 year strategic planning. We've been
Okay.
doing that for the last few years. It's the first time in my life I've ever done that for myself.
Right.
I've done it for other businesses and stuff, but not for myself. And so we're looking at that and what the long range plans are. And the Kapunas they've been telling me for about 6 years that I needed to write a book because they say that my story is inspirational,
Sure.
and to give other people the inspiration that they can do whatever they want. And so that book's been sitting there. There's actually three books that are sitting there right now. One
Wow.
that one that I think that I'm going to get published before the right after the first of the year,
Good.
which is a book about the meaning of aloha,
Oh.
using the word aloha as a way of life, because that's what the Hawaiians did. And
y-
aloha is actually an acronym for um, Hawaiian words that have very deep and powerful meaning. And if you use the words inside of the acronym, it can guide you to a very powerful spiritual life.
Oh, that's
So,
wonderful.
so a book on aloha. My wife and I are also looking at doing retreats. We want to help people on a really deep level. And so starting to next year, we're on tap to do two retreats. We're going to do one in Sedona in May,
Oh,
and
wonderful.
and one on the East Coast, I think in August or September.
Oh, great.
Professional speaking, there's a message out there, and there's a place that people want to hear um, about being able to be in control of their lives. One of the talks that I give is about um, being able to counteract the effects of stress in your busy life, and to be able to manage your pain, and to be able to activate your personal energy at any time so that you can be focused and clear and aware. So that's one aspect of it. And also, my one-on-one work. I love working with people.
Oh,
I love
yes.
having them come to see me, and working through a session and seeing them. I have so many beautiful stories of watching people's lives change in miraculous ways. I actually used to walk around telling people I got the best job in the world because I help people create miracles, and it's
Right.
really interesting, and it really is true. I've watched miracles happen in people's lives, and I love that part of my job.
That has to be exciting.
It is exciting.
Well, James, can you share one of your personal habits that you strongly believe contributes to your success?
If I was going to tell anybody today one personal habit that I have that helps me more than anything else, I would say that it was having a spiritual practice and doing daily meditation.
Okay. Yeah, I figured that that would be part of it, the
It is.
meditation.
Meditation is essential, and meditation is essential for everyone. And the
Hmm.
reason that is so important is because inside of that meditation, it gives us a place to quiet the mind. There's so many things going on in our lives. There's the busyness and the chatter and the talk. At any one time, there can be four or five conversations going on in my
Oh,
head.
yes.
and I know everybody else is kind of like that at this as well.
Right.
So unless I create a space for myself on a very regular basis where I go inside and I quiet all of that.
Hmm.
When you can get to the place and you can quiet that, that's actually when you start to hear it, because it's a form of listening.
Yes. Yes.
Listening to the guidance. And people would say listening to the word of God, or listening to that place, that inner place where you find your inspiration and you find your strength and your motivation, and sometimes the next best thing that you're going to get, like the new idea.
Right. Well, we
So
always like those new ideas. Yeah.
exactly.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
That was good. Well, then I want to ask you if you have an internet resource to share with our listeners which helps your efficiency,
An internet resource let's
like
see.
Evernote or an app or something. While you're thinking, I'm going to say,
Sure.
storytellers, you'll find the links to these sites in the show notes of today's episode at bizstoryshare.com/slash James
Kawainui. There you go.
Kawainui.
Perfect. An internet source that I use, I know this may sound kind of crazy, but Amazon is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
most people won't think about Amazon that way, but they're actually the number one search engine. And for anything that you're looking for, even if you're going for a business or a resource or some kind of manual, you can look up you can say, I'm looking for this, and
Oh, right.
it'll give you examples of that. And then the cool thing is, which is more important, is you go down and you scroll and you read the comments and the reviews that people leave. And in doing that, I've found myself that I can actually dial into the pieces of information that I need based on what I'm reading from other people's reviews. And so I've found lots of different places and menus and resources that
Oh,
way.
well, that's really interesting. Nobody's ever said that one yet. So thank you. Thank
You're
you for that.
welcome. You're
Well,
welcome.
would you describe for us who are perfect referrals for your business? And by that, I mean those that the business associates and clients that the listeners know who would benefit from doing business with you.
My my perfect referral is somebody that's in chronic pain, that's been
Okay.
in chronic pain for years.
Okay.
Um, that is a place that I do a lot of work with people, and I've been talking about chronic pain may not only be physical,
Sure.
but also emotional pain.
Sure.
I've actually worked with a lot of people that have fibromyalgia
Oh,
and PTSD and people that have had deep sexual trauma as well.
wow.
So those are perfect referrals. My other referrals are stressed out business people that have busy lives
Right.
that notice that they run out of energy or they lack the focus and the clarity, and so having when I work together with people, especially I love business people, and the other place that I work with is really high end athletes because I can help them focus
Oh.
in what they're doing, and so by being able to quiet your mind, by being able to listen to the
Mm-hmm.
knowingness that's inside of you, you actually get to tap into a resource that is always available but hardly ever used. And I've noticed in the places that I've done that with especially with businessmen, what they find is more clarity, more focus, more energy, and they're more available for their clients and for their clients, for their business, and actually the side of that, which is just as important, is they're more available for their family.
Oh, that is very important. Those were very good descriptions. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Well, if you could recommend just one book to our listeners, what would it be? And I also wanted to ask you to tell me again the name of your tattered book so that I can put it in the show notes.
Oh, sure. It's called the Book of Runes.
And is there one author or is there a number?
It's actually his name is Ralph Blum, Blum.
Oh, okay. All right. And you can use that as your book that you want to recommend or another
No,
one.
no, actually, I would love to recommend another book that I read over the summer. There's several books that I've read recently that have changed my thought form.
Okay.
One that I read over the summer was a book by a woman named Carol Dweck,
Yes.
Dweck, and the name of the book is Mindset.
Yes, I'm reading that. Yep.
That book has changed a lot of the way that I am actually seeing myself and seeing the world and being able to see the patterns that were embedded in me
Mhm.
as a child and as I was growing up.
Oh, so true.
That book is amazing.
Uh-huh.
And it's helping me when I meet people, it's helping me
Sure.
with my clients because knowing if somebody has a growth or a fixed mindset really then allows us to dial into where um, to see what their urgent needs are, let's put it that way,
Okay.
so that I can focus what I do with them to
Mhm.
provide them with the highest service that I can.
Yes. Very good recommendation. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it was an amazing book. I actually got it from a mastermind meeting that I went to several months ago,
Oh,
and they were talking about it. And I came home and I said I need to get this book, so it's on my Kindle now. So
yeah, that's where I have mine too. I like Kindle.
yeah,
Well, James, I've truly enjoyed listening to your journey and the stories that you've shared. So, will you share with us how we can get in touch with you and any other resources that you want us to have? And then we'll say goodbye.
sure. anybody that wants to get a hold of me or wants to really understand more about the work that I do, you can go to www.jameskawainui.com. And
Okay.
there's explanations about the work, there's explanations about myself, there's a place inside of that to contact me for a booking, or if you want a consultation or
Okay.
anything else like that, that you can contact me through that. My email address is also on there, so you can send me an email and we
Do you want
can.
to do you want to tell me your email?
Yeah, my email is james@jameskawainui.com.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah,
right, great.
yeah.
All right. Well, I will include those in the show notes. And so, again, thank you for everything that you've shared and for being so generous with your time and your expertise and your experiences. Okay, listeners, you can find the links to these resources and everything that we've been chatting about in today's episode at bizstorieshared.com. James Kawainui.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlotte. You did great. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Goodbye.
Bye bye now. Thank you.
Give the storyteller some love. Go to bizstorieshared.com, click on the iTunes button, and give a 5-star review. Thanks.